It's like I say to people, I trust my wife implicitly, but I don't want her performing brain surgery on me. So there's a bit of a skill gap there. So I'm as much as I value all of these things within it all, the competence aspect of it is obviously very important. And what's competence about? Well, it's about their capabilities. And that's their skills, their experience, their education, all the things they actually bring to the organisation. If it's a coach, someone's coaching record. If it's someone who's working in your marketing department, it's their obviously what they've done up until the point where you employ them and how you continue to develop them, and that obviously becomes a key part of what we're doing from a capabilities point of view. And it then also gets down to results. And the key thing there is track record. So not only is it their results up until the point where they're coming into your organisation, but their ability to create a track record. And that's where often the debate about coaches is, should you employ someone who's actually been there, done that, versus someone who's got the capacity to do it. So, for instance, if you're employing a young coach, where you're trying to you tick that box, and you tick that box through all the testing and the work that you actually do with them up until that time, you understand their capabilities because they've obviously been well educated and all those sorts of things. The question mark for any young coaches is that area. So that's that becomes what that can only be built up over a period of time. So how do you create this? Well, I'm a great believer in the empowerment model, and I know that's a lot of management speak at this stage, and we employ leading teams, and Jimmy Plunkett does a lot of work. They've had a great success record at a number of clubs, and when Dean Bailey came on board here, the first thing, when we had to make lots of trade-offs, we didn't have much money, so we had to make choices as to which way we would go in certain areas. Well, Dean made the choice he wanted to go with leading teams as one of the first resources that we invested back in the playing group. And the reason for that is to try to establish a model whereby fundamentally people take responsibility for their own personal development, which is a very powerful thing. And I think often as a manager, you feel this need to actually control all the elements. I'm quite the opposite. I'm a CEO who could be, stuff could get past me because I don't believe in watching every single invoice as it goes out in the place. I employ great people who I want to evolve and develop, who want to take control over the areas that they want to take control of, and that's where again this notion of trust comes into it. So I think it's very, very important. So the leading teams model is fundamentally one where the group, and in this case the play group, but we've extended into our staff group as well, they'll sit down and they'll articulate what the values are, if you like, the things that are important to them within the group. They'll then spend time saying, okay, tell me what the behaviours are which are actually positive in regard to those values, and let's talk about some of the behaviours which are then counter to those particular things. And then what we do is we all step back and say, yes, we basically as a group get sign off on those things. It'd be fairly broad, and generally when you're talking about values, there's nothing dramatic in regard to it all. It generally relates to attitudes and those types of things, and we agree on what those things are. And then what we ask is we ask the people to go away and write the names of 2, 3, 4 names of people who they think best represent those within the group, and the play group and the leadership group then evolves as part of it, and it's then up to that leadership group to do the things of which they are required of them to instill those behaviours and values within the group. And the main thing which comes out of that is actually the capacity to challenge each other, and that doesn't matter if you're the youngest player in the club coming through the system, or if you're James McDonald. That James McDonald goes into a game or into a training session or into a meeting, knowing that the youngest player in the group has the capacity to actually challenge him at any level if he feels that anything that he's doing is counter to what they've actually all signed off on. Generally, what we then look at is create mechanisms within your club whereby you can measure it in some shape or form. And most measurements in this area is obviously less formal because values change from person to person. People have different expectations in that sense. So what we try to do is we produce, coming out of this, a trademark. And the trademark is generally a call to action or something which we can actually define it. And it's almost coincidental, but our players, when they first sat down and did this a couple of years ago, came up with the trademark whatever it takes. And Whatever It Takes has great resonance in our club, because it was also the name of Jimmy Steins' book that he wrote when he finished his playing career, and quite clearly symbolised his challenge, as a young player coming from Ireland, to do what he did and plays 244 games and win a Brownlow, and obviously very strong in his current battle with his illness. So that trademarks very much resonates with it. But how they actually challenge each other, and we do it within our group as well, is that the leadership group will sit down with each other, and they'll come up with 3 words to describe the person, 2 things they want to stop doing, 2 things they want to start doing, and 2 things they want to keep doing. And that's a fairly confronting process, not only for the receiver of the information, but it's also very confronting for the person who's giving the feedback as well. So it creates a means and a mechanism by which you can have a meaningful conversation with each other. And as I said, we've done the same thing with our staff groups. So don't ever think that this is exclusive to playing groups where there's a sort of more obvious sense of team and structure. But we've done it with our own staff group, and we've got a group called the Centre Bounce Team, which they named themselves, CBT, of which was voted by our staff who best represented the values. And there's not one member of the senior management team actually a part of that, but one of the groups sits on all senior management team meetings. And it's a very, very powerful mechanism whereby I say, you guys are the people who are going to drive the values. I've got to model them because I'll buy in on them, and as leaders within the organisation, quite clearly you have to be consistent with them. But in the end, it's the Centre Bounce team, and it consists of a couple of coaches, a couple of guys from our media area, a couple of guys from within the more operational area. By coincidence, good spread of people throughout the organisation, and they're bought in on it, and it's been very, very important for us, particularly when the offices and the workplace we've got is fairly fragmented, based over a number of different venues. So the Centre Bounce team, obviously the notion of it is, you got the oval, you got the square. These are the guys, the 4 guys in the Centre Bounce. As it turns out, it's a few more than that. But if you're playing off, your full forward's playing off your man here, or if the wingman's not coming in off the square here, or the backman's is standing behind his man there, well, not everyone's buying in on this notion of trying to create it. So it's a terrific model, and I'm really pleased. And I'll even throw different challenges to them. And the challenge that I throw to them is to say, there's no reason this shouldn't be the best workplace you've ever operated in. It's got a great persona about it. You meet fantastic people. There's terrific public interest in it. We operate out of the MCG. We've got this great many means and reasons why we should be a fantastic workplace. And so what these guys are, is that's their number one challenge. And if we can create all that, well, then this thing becomes really strong. We've built it on trust, we've created a mechanism for it to actually happen, and we've built a trademark which we actually believe in, and we all sort of half salute to each day we come into work. But more than anything, it creates that sort of unity which is so fundamental to the establishment of great organisations, and most importantly, the building of trust. And so that is a very important area for us. I hope that gives you a bit of a snapshot on how we're going about it, and hope you've learned something for your own organisations, because I can assure you it doesn't matter what sort of business you're in, or whether it's a family, whether it's any group, but to be able to challenge yourselves and to have a meaningful conversation with each other is one of the critical components. So thanks for listening, and I look forward to catching up next week.